Happy Friday.
Hey, happy Friday. We're back. We missed last week.
Yeah.
I just realized that.
Life comes up, as everyone knows. Things in life sometimes throw you a curveball, and
So unpredictable.
you got to adjust.
You wake up and you never know what's headed your way. Hopefully you wake up though.
Yeah, that's always a plus.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
It's always a blessing to wake up.
Yeah.
I do feel like that when I wake up.
You're like, alive another day.
I do sometimes. I think like, oh, thank you. Thank you. Universe. Lord. Who's ever out there?
Very good. Very good.
What do you have planned for today, weekend?
Well, my wife is out of town. She's been out of town since Wednesday. Her and my daughter went back to pick up the remains of my daughter's college stuff because she couldn't take it all in her car. We didn't go pick her up this year. She just packed up her car and came home, and she has the lease till like August, so she was able to leave stuff. So they're going to go pick that up. And then while they were down that way, they're going to run to one of my wife's friend's house, Kara, for the weekend. Yeah, she'd hang out with them and the girls and their husband. So made a little trip out of it, so.
Yeah, Amelia was telling me. That's so nice.
Yeah. So they'll be gone till Monday. So yeah, it's bachelor pad. Me and my son, bachelor pad for the weekend.
Is Steve coming over?
I know he got pink eye. So I'm like, I don't care. He's like, it's all cleared up, and I'm like, we're gonna give it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not gonna roll the dice on that. But
wow, yeah.
No, but I did reach out to a handful of friends, just to see what was going on, if anyone was doing anything this weekend. And one of my friends is having a party on Saturday, so that'll be fun. So we'll, just tonight, I think a buddy's coming by. We'll play some guitar and hang out, have some drinks.
Nice.
Yeah.
I am in full-on wedding planning mode. I was so laid back about this wedding for so long, and all of a sudden it hit me this week. I was like, we don't have anything planned. We better get on this. And then I tried planning some things, and it's like, oh, we've been booked for years. It's like, oh, it's not so easy to pull together a last-minute wedding, is it? It's been a tad bit stressful, but I'm trying to not get stressed about it because it's going to be great no matter what. It'll work out.
Right.
Yeah. So I was about to go with this plant-based company to cater it in Chicago and like cart everything to Michigan. And then, because I think I told you, Roger, a chef friend, my friend's brother, but also a friend, was out of town that weekend. But he just called me yesterday and said he can do it because his gig canceled. Yes. So thrilled. So now Raj will be on site, like making things fresh for us, which will be fun. It'll be fun to have him. And I think we're going to do a taco bar and have like all fresh tortillas. The only thing is like that, the plant-based company has it down. Raj isn't specifically a plant-based chef, but he's so good. He can do anything, So we were kind of coming up with ideas. He's going to get back to me today with like menu ideas, but I think a taco bar sounds fun with a bunch of, little yummy things.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in a few years. It's been I don't think I've seen him since he had given me some promotional items for the picnics I used to throw. I went to his house and went and picked him up or whatever, hung out for a little while. Great guy.
Well, Raj is the same.
Yeah.
Answer is like, dude, Raj, Roger, you have not changed. What's going on? Well, I need a whole bunch of food, Raj. But no, he looks the same. He talks the same. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing all weekend. I have to find a dress. I have to try and put a music together. The whole thing. But
that'd be fun.
It's coming together.
I'm working on getting some of the guests here and getting getting them set up. So all right, it's all coming together.
Yep.
A couple weeks away.
3 weeks from tonight.
Oh.
Sorry, everybody. Hey, I had that turned off. That's weird. Okay. Anywho, let's get on with it.
All right, let's get on with the meal. So the big release.
Did I lose you? Oops. Did you lose me?
No, I can see you. Can you see me?
Oh, I'm back. Okay.
No.
All right.
Hang on, this takes a second here. There we go.
So this week we have really simple and really cozy. We called it simple and cozy because that's what I feel when I see these recipes in front of me. It's like simple and cozy. Now, doesn't that look cozy?
It's delicious. Delicious.
Okay, so in our latest episode of the podcast, we talked about food cravings, and then we kind of went around like why we crave certain things, and we talked about what we crave, and it's kind of like these emotions that come up from your past, and we're Italian, and like anything related to, like, we call it ragout, which is like ricotta, but my grandma, it's Italian, said ragout. So like anything with ragout, the cheese, just brings back those warm and fuzzy feelings for us. So it could be stuffed into a shell. It could be manigot. It can be on toast. It's just so good and comforting for us. So it may not be your warm and fuzzy comfort food, but it will be when you try it.
Yeah, it's such a great combo. Just that cheese with and again, that cheese and sauce is kind of in a lot of dishes, like you said, like with stuffed shells or manigot, any of that stuff. But just on here, I've had this at restaurants. Like I've had, I see like the whipped ricotta on toast. Like that's starting to be popular or whatever. So it's kind of a play on that. I've ordered it before. I mean, albeit not for many years now. But that it is such a great combo. I mean, this is like a pasta dinner, just less the pasta. You got the bread on the side, you got the cheese.
Yeah,
right. It is a great, like I would eat this for lunch. I mean, I would eat it for a meal. I know we're kind of putting out as more of an appetizer. But again, like this, I mean, if I had like that does happen sometimes where I'll make pasta, even like with the shells, and I'll have leftovers. And it's like, I'll just slap this together, You could roast garlic cloves pretty easy, but this combination is really good, and your guests will love it. I mean, it's really, really good.
Well, and also depending on the baguette, like if you get a long, thin baguette and you want it as an appetizer, just slice it into the little rounds and make this as a really tasty little, like almost like bruschetta or crostini, whatever you want to call it, appetizer. But for this photo anyway, if you sliced it like longer slices, and like for me, that is a meal with a salad on the side. That's a great dinner.
Yeah.
That and a salad is perfect. So make it your own. The things that we want to point out about this one is basically that's the light and creamy tofu. And I know many of you meal planners have already made that and loved it. We got great feedback on that. So that making that alone is delicious. So that's what that is if you made it before. We didn't really change it much. And then what we did was roasted the vegetables for this sauce. So we have a lot of red sauces, or we call them gravy, call it gravy on our site, because we just play around with it and do different things. Some we add a lot more basil to it. Some we add fire roasted tomatoes to it. This one is a little more special because we actually roast a red pepper, onions, garlic, and tomatoes in the oven. So you get all those roasty, smoky flavors. And then that roasted garlic is just so nice. We blend it all together in the blender and came up with this because it's just, another element. It's just a nicer element to give it a punch. And then we also roast an entire head of garlic. And if you've never done this before, it's fun because you just actually wrap it in tinfoil, roast it in the oven for like 30 minutes. Oh, you know what? I think we forgot to say slice the top off. We should add that to the recipe. I'll make a note of that. You know how you slice the top?
Right.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to. Typically, people typically do it to get the olive oil like inside. But even when you roast it, you don't need to. I've roasted it whole before. It is easier to get it all apart at the end because then you're not peeling it all and have whole. The problem with like a whole clove is like when you try and get the cloves off singularly, all the garlic inside is kind of really mushy or roasted. If you ever roasted garlic, it's just like really soft. So when you try to pluck those off, sometimes it like kind of squeezes out here and there and whatnot.
Right. So when you slice it off first, it's already sliced, and then you can just separate them and squeeze it out.
Yeah.
You don't have to cut anything, is what I'm saying. I'll add that. I'll just add it. because I think
It,
it
it
is.
is easy because you can just kind of turn it upside down and squeeze the whole thing if it's cooled off.
Yeah, I've done that before too.
Yeah.
I just realized that we didn't add it. I'm sure we didn't because I just remember the recipe. Okay, so then that's what you do. You just squeeze all that. It's like sweet roasted garlic into a bowl, and that's separate from the roasted garlic. So we're doing that, and at the same time you're roasting your vegetables. But we also are roasting separate cloves of garlic with the vegetables. So it's two separate things. This roasted head garlic is going to be a spread that we spread on the toast. It's under the cheese sauce. So the head is separate. And then with your tomatoes, peppers, and onions, we're roasting like just 6 separate cloves. You also leave the skin on those. And then all of that goes into your sauce. So I spelled it all out in the meal prep, but I just don't want anyone to be confused when I say add the roasted garlic to the blender. You don't add that whole head of it. It's, I don't think anybody would because that seems like an awful lot of garlic, but I wanted it to be clear. So it's all in the notes.
And this should be a little bit on the thicker side. You don't want it kind of spilling over the side or making a mess. So it should be a little thicker with all the vegetables. I didn't really add a lot of water into it to make it like a thin sauce, like spaghetti sauce. So it should be a little thicker, so you can kind of keep it on top of the toast.
Yes, and then we also put a layer of our almond parm, which you probably already have some in your fridge. It's not even that much, but it's just a little sprinkle over the ragout because it's just another layer of flavor. It just, that stuff just adds flavor. So if you have some, great. I always have it in my fridge. And that's why we always say this, but it's nice to have these leftovers because you never know what the recipe will be next week. You're probably going to use it or sprinkle it on something or, but if you don't, it kind of does make a lot. It makes about this much. So if you don't want to go through and use all that, because I know that's like a cup of almond flour and that, it's not cheap. And if you're thinking, well, I'm going out of town or I'm not going to use all of it, you could just cut the recipe in half. Or if you just want to skip it, you can. It just adds another layer. I mean, the star really is the tofu ragout and the gravy. But, just if you can definitely cut the recipe in half if you'd like. And I put the half recipe in the show notes and the meal prep. So I did the math for you. I don't like doing recipe math, but it's done. It's in there.
It's done.
It's done.
All right.
And other than that, it's just crunchy deliciousness. And I wish I had some for lunch right now. It was so good. And it is lunchtime.
All right. Move on. Oops. There we go.
The cheesy breakfast casserole. What more do we need to say?
So yeah, but it has it has all those good elements in there. I mean, it's kind of based off of the other potato recipe, not au gratin. What was the other one we had?
That's the au gratin, I think.
Was it? Was it au gratin?
Yeah,
I guess it was. Yeah. But adding in those breakfast elements, I've had breakfast casseroles before. But yeah, adding in the veggies, adding in the sausage crumbles, that cheesiness, it all kind of comes together very well. It's also something good to, if you're having company or people for breakfast or a brunch or something like that, it's good to be able to kind of make one meal easily and that can feed people. If you're sitting down to breakfast, I don't know if you're going to throw this together for yourself. It's a lot of food, even if you try to meal. But again, even like
last week,
I've made right. Then you eat quite a bit of it if you're making it for yourself.
That's a lot, yeah.
And it's hearty. I mean, it's a hearty. Like even just I'm thinking of a 9x9 or an 8x8 square pan. Even if you cut it into 9 portions, to like the 3x3 inch portions, it's still a hearty kind of chunk. I could eat 2 for sure, but like my wife wouldn't. She would eat 2. Like it's enough, man. Like there's enough in there for you. It's sticks to your
body. It's pretty hearty. I think it's great for a brunch because actually after you make it, you let it just set, so if you leave it out for a little bit, just so that cheese inside. So what you do is you blend the cheese sauce in the blender. You layer, well, let me just start from scratch. You make the breakfast sausage crumbles. So the crumbles, if you haven't made them yet, they taste just like breakfast sausage. It's like shocks me still that it's not actual meat. It tastes so good. We got the spices down for those. So we start with the breakfast sausage. Thinly sliced potatoes. You can use a mandolin or a really sharp knife. Try to make them in about 1/8 of an inch thick. And then we saute veggies, onions, peppers, and mushrooms. So that's all layered in there. And then we make the cheese sauce in the blender. And typically we take the cheese sauce and then we make it on the stovetop and we, stir it up and it turns into a sauce. In the blender, it's just the liquid mixture. But with this, we pour all of it from your blender all over the whole, evenly over the whole top. And it cooks while it's baking. So don't cook it on the stovetop and make a sauce.
Right,
It's that liquid mixture that we want, even though we call it a sauce.
But it sets up really well. You can cut it really nice. Try to make your potatoes as even as possible. If you have a mandolin, definitely use the mandolin. I have like a chintzy. It's funny, my wife bought me like a super professional mandolin like 10 years ago. And I don't know, the blades broke, like it was falling apart. Like it was so disappointing. And then to combat it, we just bought like this little handheld chintzy plastic one. I've had that thing for almost 10 years now, and we still use it.
I have, yeah. It looks like nothing. I know.
Right, and it just makes good even slices. Like you can kind of keep the slices even. I was trying to gauge like when I was making it a few times because sometimes the potatoes are thick and then they don't cook.
Yeah.
So just balancing that out. If you do hand cut them and you notice that some are thicker, I try to use those on the bottom just to kind of create more of a base in the bottom rather than in the center. I don't know if there's anything too as far as how they cook, if they're going to cook better on the bottom. I'm not sure, but try to get the even thickness. And I think like, a 1/16 is too thin, but I think an 1/8 is almost too thick. So it's kind of in between, those two.
That's true. That's what I think. An 1/8 might be a tiny bit too thick. Yeah, just eyeball it. You don't want them thick or you don't want them paper thin. As you can see in mine, some of them are a little bit paper thin. I put the thicker ones on the bottom too. And this time I just noticed that this one, so we did this a couple of different times, a couple of different ways. The recipe, the ratios work great. This one's a 9x13 pan. I doubled the sauce and I felt like it was way too much cheese, but we play around with these. We really do. We test them all different ways. And the pan and the ratio to the cheese sauce in the recipe is like perfect. And you can even see here, I sprinkled some almond firm on it because I do that with that almond firm. It's not in the recipe, but hey, if you have some around, toss it in there.
Yeah. Another level of flavor.
Definitely a winner.
And lastly, these little beauties.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited to have a cookie in my life.
Yeah, these are great. These are really, really good.
Really good.
Like I was just telling you, they do kind of have a holiday kind of taste to them. Just, I don't know if that people are familiar with Chinese spice. I was never familiar until I made something with it. I mean, a while ago now.
One of our recipes, I think.
Yeah, and then and then in the end, it was like, well, what can I use this then? Like I mean, it just has such a great. It's so fragrant and has kind of that all those great tastes or smells within it. I just thought it paired very well with like that cookie. But I don't know. You can have these. I've made these a ton of times now. Everyone loves them. You don't make a lot, so they go pretty quick. Unfortunately, like if everyone's like, "Ooh, cookies," and then it's like, all right, everyone had 3 and now they're gone.
They're gone, right? I just hate to say the word holiday because I don't want people to only make these for the holidays. And the reason he's saying it, I'm just looking up here it is. It's so a Chinese 5-spice powder is a blend of 5 spices. That's all. They just blend them together. So you don't have to measure them all out, a spice blend. It's just easier. And this one is cinnamon, fennel, star anise, chili pepper, and cloves. And that combination, it does have that holiday feel because they're like warm and toasty spices. But these are just cookies, they're just, it's that flavor combination is so good together. And you can find that anywhere. It might, if you haven't used it before or have heard of it, you can find it anywhere. I mean, it's there. Sometimes it's just called 5-spice powder. You don't have to go to a special store, just in your spice aisle. But they're also so easy. How easy are these cookies?
Yeah. It takes like not even 10 minutes to make the dough, and then
it bakes in like 15 minutes, 17 minutes, depending on your oven. You just toss it all in, stir it up. And the other fun thing, which I love doing, And I hope it's clear in the directions. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing writing these recipes. Because Phil and I go back and forth, like, is that clear? And then he'll read it and I'll read it and rework it, because we want to make it clear. The worst thing is to go through a recipe and, somebody does it wrong because the writing wasn't clear. That's what I fear.
Right.
That's a bummer. But anyway, so you just get the dough and you roll it out into 14 little balls, tiny little balls. What I do is split it in half, split it in quarters, and then do the math. Roll it into 14. And then on your parchment paper lined baking sheet, you put all the little balls, spread them out, and then you take another little piece of parchment paper and you're using it so that the glass doesn't stick to it, but you take a drinking glass and the parchment paper and you just like press straight down and they go into like that shape. It's so cool. So to make them thinner, you just press a little harder, obviously, but I mean, just a little press and they just pop out into these perfect little cookies. And
just make sure you're pressing about the same. You don't want one thick, because you're adjusting the size with your press. So just make sure they're about the same, or some are going to be, overdone. Some might be underdone depending on how you do it, but just try and get them as close as possible. What I was doing too was the first ones, I'd press it and then I'd flip the glass is perfect. Like we have regular drinking glasses. So the mouth is pretty wide. So I'd press it and then I flip the glass upside down and just kind of circle the cookie, and it kind of tightened up the edges. And I was like, oh, remember those like almond cookies? Do you remember almond cookies? Like
I was going to talk to you about those. Those are my favorite. We have to make.
So just remember how they were though. Like they were kind of flat on the edges and they were kind of thicker, but it's like, they came out just kind of like almond cookies. And I'm like, I don't know. That seemed like a lot of directions. It's like, if you just press them flat, they're fine. You don't need to tighten the edges, but it did work out pretty cool. Like the way they came out in the end was really, it was like, wow, that looks like
I did notice
cookie machine.
I did notice in your photos that yours looked more perfect. Mine were more looking. I was like, how do you do that?
I made them like 10 times. And then I made variations too. Like I made a handful of variations.
Well, I want to make an almond because they were so crispy and crunchy and that almond flavor. We could do it.
Yeah.
Almond extract, I think, will be the key to that.
Almond flour.
Coming together. And then I just chopped my own almonds. I don't know if you bought slivered almonds. In the recipe, we just wrote almonds, slivered or chopped, whatever you want, but just put them right in there, decorate them however you want. And then they only bake for like 15, 17 minutes and they're done. Take them out, put them on a cooling rack so they cool. And then you don't have to sprinkle them with this Maldon. I love that Maldon salt. And I think that little bit of salt at the end is really nice, but you don't have to put that on. They're still delicious. All right. A little bit of salt in the recipe too. It looks pretty though.
Delish.
We've got another cookie. I don't even know if I have any left, but they kind of flew out of here.
So as we talked about before, we're trying to put out more kind of appetizers, desserts, snacks, sides, things like that, just to kind of round things out a little bit more. I know we get, if you're a meal planner, definitely send the feedback form in. We try to take all that feedback in and kind of, figure out where we want to go and what we want to put out just based on what people are looking for. So if you're just kicking back, just having things come out as they are, that's fine. But if you want to, throw some feedback in, we're certainly taking in all the feedback and trying to get out what people are looking for right now. So let us hear it. Let us hear from you.
Yeah, I think it's really great to have all those different types of recipes. And I also think sometimes people think it's a little overwhelming to have, 3 main meals every week. Who can keep up with that? I couldn't.
Right.
So it's nice. It's like, oh, this week I'm going to file this one away and I'm going to make the cookies. And maybe in 2 weeks, I'm going to make that for brunch. It's just nice to have an assortment. We feel like we like that. So we're hoping that you'll like that too.
Well, I also like the idea of, just we just had a podcast. We talked about food cravings on Tuesday, but just to have some, some things in your back pocket. I have a food craving. I have a sweet tooth tonight, and I want something sweet. Literally, I've done that with these where it's like, I'm going to make those cookies real quick, and within a half hour, we're all having to have a couple of cookies.
They're so quick.
But in the end, it's like, all right, well, I have the bliss balls. I don't have any tofu to make the pudding. Like all the components here, I usually have on hand. I usually always have tahini. I always have the spices, the Chinese 5-spice. I don't use it that often, so I have a jar like this big. I don't even think it's half gone yet. Like sometimes I'll dust that into some things to try it out, but yeah, just really easy, really quick, and really good, man. These are great. But just to have kind of some options, and you don't want to always have nice cream. You don't want to always have bliss balls. You want to have different options. Just, hey, I want a cookie today. I have some plant milk and a couple of cookies. It's a great combo.
And to freeze them too. I love having sweets in the freezer because I'm not a big sweet person, but when I get that craving, I want like 1 or 2 cookies. And just to have them in the freezer, or sometimes I have the freezer fudge in there. I like just a chunk of that, like 1 chunk, or the bliss balls, 1 little ball, I'm good. But the freezer for me is key for these desserts.
Yeah.
Because I leave them in there for weeks and don't think about them until my craving hits. That doesn't work that way with popcorn, though. That's like a daily event in my house.
See, I'll make these, and it's like I'll have a couple, my wife will have a couple, and in the morning they're gone. It's just like, what the heck? Where'd the cookies go? Yeah, right. And my son will be like, "Oh, those cookies were great." It's just like, hey, you had 6 of them last night. It's like, jeez, man. I'll whip up another batch real quick.
So this batch, I made them, and then I was photographing them right away, and then I just had them out on the counter, and then a couple hours later, Frank comes by, and he's like, "You photographed those already, right?" And I'm like, "Did you eat them?" He's like,
"Gone."
I was like, "Oh yeah."
Thanks for asking after the fact.
It's hard to walk by him and not eat a few. No, he didn't eat them all. I had plenty to photograph. I'm just kidding.
All righty. All right. Well, that's what we got for today. It's a little gloomy here in Chicago. I think it's supposed to rain all day long on my bachelor party weekend.
Well, it's great news for my garden and all of our new plants. Yeah, I'm not complaining because we need it.
Yeah. I just did a little update on my garden. My garden is rock. I haven't had tomato plants this good in probably 5-7 years. Yeah. So just moving the garden around, I moved a location in the garden, and I did like that extra batch of compost this year. So, and I'm actively weeding, and I'm actively pruning the bottoms of the plants and stuff, but it's all working. Everything is going. And I have a pumpkin. It's like this big already. It's like a baseball size already.
Oh my gosh! Did you do a tour on Monday? Because I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I did. I'll do more because now it's like, it's like I have that fence, and it's like a 3-foot fence, but everything is like coming over, encroaching the fence already. Like it's really, really.
Whoa. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go watch that. Yeah, our yard, I told you, we planted all the native plants, not vegetables. We have a little garden, but I'm talking about like all the flowers and everything. It's like the second phase of our backyard. And the bunnies are like eating it to shreds.
Yeah.
There's so many bunnies. And we're just trying to, we're creating this so all these critters do come into the yard. And as much as we're enjoying like all the birds and the squirrels and the woodpeckers and the hawks, like we're seeing everything. And I do love seeing those bunnies, but I don't love seeing them chowing down on my brand new plant.
Chomping.
They just stare at me, and he's got a long stalk in his mouth. And I'm like, come on, stop it. They're I'll show you. They're strip bare. These long stalks, strip bare. But our guy said, as long as the roots are there, they should be fine. I hope the bunny's not ripping it up.
He'll show you. He's out there next week. No, you devil. All right, everybody. Hope everyone has a great weekend and eat some great plant food. And we'll talk to everyone next week.
And let us know what you think of these. If you make them, you always do. We love it. We love seeing your posts. So please keep us posted on what you think. We're going to love them.
All right, everybody. Have a good weekend.